So, starting off, the Talis' normal attack is a simple but pretty long-ranged attack that restores PP and can also be used while moving. Like all weapons, the Talis can counter with a normal attack after a successful dodge. Next, the dodge and dash attacks are somewhat similar to each other, but the dash attack deals about twice as much damage, passes through everything in a line, and has a much wider AoE. There's then of course the Talis' Photon Blast, which positions 6 Talises up in the air in front of you, and then drops down a huge energy beam onto the target, damaging from the top down. We then have the weapon action, which by default has you place a Talis in the air that acts like a stationary auto turret, and will constantly attack one enemy at a time. The damage isn't that great, but the important part is that it recovers PP every hit, and you are briefly invulnerable while placing the Talis too. This attack can then be turned into a multi-target attack by taking the skill Floating Pillbox Multi-Rock in either the Force or Tech or skill trees. Once learned, when using the weapon action without a directional input, you will be able to hit up to 3 enemies at a time. However, if you want to use the single target version after learning the skill, you will have to use a directional input plus the weapon action. Anyways, the AoE version is weaker than the single target one, but it will end up restoring a lot more PP if you're hitting enough enemies. Moving on, the Talis can use techniques normally. However, it also has the ability to put its user into a single target or AoE mode with the use of corresponding photon arts. These modes don't last forever, but you can get right back into them or reset the timer by reusing the associated photon art. Conversely, once taking the skill Talis Bloom Revoke in either the Force or Tech or skill trees, you can exit these modes or stances or whatever you want to call them by holding down the weapon action. So, the first photon art is Convergence Shot, and this will first shoot out a focused attack that will put you into a ranged single target mode. In this mode, you will send out 1 shot per tech use. However, you can also hold a tech to continuously fire it. Furthermore, all techs used in this mode will be changed into the same attack, deal the same damage, and cost the same amount of PP, and will mostly maintain your altitude. That being said, you should still match tech's elements to enemies' elemental weaknesses for the extra damage, and to proc statuses and elemental downs. The second and final photon art we have so far is Spread Shot, which performs a 2-stage AoE attack and will then put you into your AoE modes. Letting the PA complete its animation will turn your techs into circle AoEs, similar to the PA itself. However, if you cancel Spread Shot after its first hit with a normal attack or tech, your techs will instead become 3 elemental spikes that shoot out in a straight line in front of you. This can hit up to 3 different enemies, but for the time being, it can only hit once per enemy. Just like the single target mode, all techs in these AoE modes can be held down to use repeatedly, and will become equal in terms of power and PP cost. Also, matching elemental weaknesses still matters too. There's then one more attack the Talis has access to, and it comes in the form of a skill in both the Force and Tech or skill trees called Tricky Capacitor. This must be used from the weapon palette or sub-palette. However, to even use it, you must first fill up its gauge by using Talis-based attacks, and this gauge is shown accumulating in real time at the icon itself. Anyways, Tricky Capacitor grants partial invulnerability during its animation, can hit up to 5 times, and will restore 20 PP per hit that lands. In general, it's a nice attack that can also restore a lot of PP. Though the only thing to be wary of when using this is that it does not track enemies at all, and will originate from the location you are aiming at or locked onto when activating the skill. I'd like to now wrap things up by going over a few more skills that can affect the Talis, but are not Talis specific. Starting in the Forces skill tree, the first 4 skills at the top left all aid in PP regeneration, though after one point it's up to personal preference. Moving down, the Photon Flare buff and its accompanying skills do work with the Talis too, but keep in mind they are main class only skills. After that, we have another 3 skills that exist on both the Force and Tech or skill trees. If you end up using these 2 classes together, you technically only need these on one tree at a time. All the way at the top right, there's Slow Landing, which allows you to fall slowly when charging techs mid-air. This does not affect uncharged techs or techs used in the Talis modes, as they already have something like that built in. Then, somewhat in the middle, there's Bardablot and Zonde-Clad, which are associated with the Ice and Lightning techs. Bardablot will cause uncharged Ice techs to leave sigils on enemies, which can then be detonated with a charged Ice tech. And Zonde-Clad will put you into a high voltage state after using 10 uncharged lightning techs, which will increase the next charged lightning tech's power. Unfortunately, these two skills don't work with the Talis modes as they don't use the charge mechanic. However, just like slow landing, you should still consider taking them as you won't always be in one of those modes and you might want to use other tech weapons too. And that's about it for what you need to know about Talis before jumping in. Personally, part of me misses how Talis worked in base PSO2, but I'm glad that it's still very unique. Anyways, I hope everyone gives the Talis a shot, and until next time, tech responsibly.